Welcome back. Now, four-time Rugby world champions, the Springboks, have concluded their World Cup trophy tour, and I think not a minute too soon. What those guys have done for this country is unbelievable. They deserve the rest. But Sports, Arts and Culture Minister Zizi Kodwa thanked the rugby team for sharing their victory with the rest of the country. And South Africans, as you saw on our TV screens, came out in their numbers to cheer the Springboks after their World Cup triumph in France. But how do we keep that gees going post the Springbok victory? So to help us discuss this further, we joined in studio by Terry Oakley-Smith, the founder and CEO of Diversi-T. Terry, so good to have you with us. Welcome to Morning Live.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you so much, Sakina.
So, I was thinking about this yesterday and I thought, in 1995, we won the Rugby World Cup and we won AFCON in 1996. And at that moment, we had that gees going in the country. And it looked like, we were set to be on a great trajectory for reconciliation and social cohesion as a country. But then it fizzled out. So we seem to have been given a second chance almost at recapturing that moment. How do we keep the gees going?
And we had it in 2019 as well. We had it in 2010 after the Soccer World Cup. Was not that we won it, but we hosted it. And I think the thing is, to be honest, Sakina, it's very difficult to keep that going. And I think it provides a challenge for all of us as South Africans. When I looked at all the people, say, standing at the airport, waiting for the buses, together, black and white, of Indian heritage, Muslim, I wondered how many of them had actually spoken to their neighbours. Do you think anyone has been in touch with the people they were standing next to since then? So what I'm saying is, without wanting to spoil the moment, because it was a magnificent moment, we do these things very well. We get together for these big moments. But what we really need to learn from the Springbok team is how can we keep together every day? How can we keep together in our businesses? How can we keep together in our schools, in our churches and mosques, temples, whatever? How can we keep that spirit going?
What do you think is preventing us from doing that, from reaching out and having those conversations and getting together with our neighbours on a daily basis, Terry?
It's so hard to say, Sakina, but it just really still isn't happening. If you look at the stats for the number of South Africans of different races that socialise, genuinely socialise, not just house it, but, go to each other's houses, know each other's kids and families, it still remains a very small number. And I think we also tend to think of diversity in terms of race in this country. And of course, race is and probably will always be extremely important. But I think what the Springboks showed us is that diversity includes so many other aspects. Language. I think we all learned a bit of Afrikaans. I certainly learned some Afrikaans that I wasn't familiar with after this. Religion, gender. I saw that the woman who comes on to do the physiotherapy was a woman, and that really surprised me. So I think that the Springboks really showed us that diversity and inclusion is far more than just race anyway. And then if we take that into our businesses, where do we start? If we take it into our schools, say. We start, I think, by really getting to know each other, by creating awareness. And it's actually really sad that almost 30 years later, we still don't really know one another as South Africans.
But again, and I'm struggling with this because if we think of the last 30 years, say, where children, for example, say, let's take the Born Frees, and they went to school together, across the racial divide. They didn't have the barriers that we had back in the day. So again, even in those settings, it seems that children still seemed to gravitate towards, certain groupings, even in the school setup and in the work setup. We still have issues whereby we don't recognize each other out of context. You work with someone every day, and when they see you in the mall, they don't recognize you because you're out of context type of thing. how do we move beyond these things? What can we practically do, building on this gees that we've seen, the South Africans coming together across racial, religious and other divides for the Boks? How can we take this moment and move from there?
You see, I think it starts with creating awareness, as I said, actually encouraging people to actually get to know each other. I mean, white people, I know we're a minority, 7.2, but still very powerful. Do we know where our domestic worker lives? Have we ever taken her home? Have we ever seen? So it starts with these small approaches. And then I think in business, it really has to do with training people, bringing people together, helping them understand, say, for example, the importance of greeting African people. Small things, but very important things. And then I think looking back at the Springboks, what we also saw was the importance of leadership, Sakina. I mean, I think all of us were just so impressed with our captain. And what he said as well, how he promoted diversity and social cohesion. And we need to ask ourselves, are our leaders actually seeing the benefit? Because there are business benefits, the huge financial benefits that come to businesses that actually really make diversity work, make people feel that they're included. I mean, the financial benefits are written about worldwide. And we're so lucky in South Africa. We have phenomenal diversity, the kind of diversity that other countries would really love to have. And so it really behoves us to try and do something to really make this work for us, especially during these dark times of load shedding and other things that are distressing us. I think we must try and build on the diversity.
Terry, do companies actually contact you, or do you find that companies are actually actively trying to foster that sort of cohesion in the workspace?
Look, they do, but I think that the problem with it very often is it's a once-off event. And you can't change a whole organizational culture by doing a once-off event. I think what companies need to do is really understand inclusion as a process, which starts with awareness. You then need to teach managers how to manage people who are diverse. You need then to go to leadership and make sure that the leadership, the board, everybody involved knows what their role would be in creating inclusion. So yes, obviously companies are doing far more than they used to, but very few of them are really seeing it through and saying this is a process, it's not enough. If you just do a little bit, if you do, say, a day's session, it can often create more harm than good. Because when you put South Africans together, we like talking about these things. And often it brings up painful, for Black South Africans especially, talking about difference, talking about the past is very painful. So, one day doesn't hack it, Sakina. Companies really need to get involved and see it as a process, not as a once-off.
So does this mean that, we are all upbeat now, and as, everybody goes back to their normal lives and the gees dies down, we just retreat back into our laws as South Africans go back to where you came from? Is that what's going to happen to us right now?
That's what I hope not, but that's certainly what's happened in the past. In 2005, as you mentioned, when we had Madiba with the number on his back, that was a magnificent moment. 2019, and now again. But what does happen is people go back into their everyday routine where nothing has changed, and very soon similar patterns emerge. So it really behoves not just organizations, but schools, universities as well, to try and capitalize on this moment, to maybe talk about it, to get people discussing their experience of it, and to try and build on it so that it doesn't just stay as a once-off moment, however wonderful that moment was.
What's different today as well from what we had in maybe 1995 and 1996 is that we have social media. as well. You know, a platform like TikTok, for example, has been absolutely fabulous, you know, looking at South Africans, showcasing how they are trying, you know, to bridge the divide between us. How can we better use platforms like that?
I think that's such a good point, Sakina. I think social media can be immensely powerful. Unfortunately, I mean, and I agree, I've also seen some amazing things on TikTok, but already we're starting to see some quite toxic things on X. We heard this morning from the EFF that with criticism of the Springbok emblem. And I remember when it was decided that that emblem would be kept, there was huge debate about it then and its apartheid allyship. But I think that the teams have shown that they go beyond merely being an emblem. But I think, you know, it's not going to be easy to keep this mood going. And I think it's up to all of us, Sakina. Maybe we can all ask ourselves, what can I do? You know, we've seen South Africa can be wonderful. There can be social cohesion. If our rugby team can do it, what can I do? In what way can I make a difference in my company, in my school, with my friendship group? How can I keep this going?
What about government? What about the president, you know, taking advantage of this moment, this opportunity?
You know, I feel a little despondent that it isn't really a government task. I mean, in a way, somehow, I mean, the government has never had any person in government responsible for social cohesion, which I think they should have had from day one. They should have had somebody in every department, not just the sports, art and culture. In education, they should have had somebody responsible. And the government tends to build on these magic moments without really getting involved in all of the departments. And perhaps if we have a different government, they'll realize the importance of this for us as a country and work much harder at building social cohesion and not leave it to odd events or our rugby team or our football team. Banyana, for example, was another moment, not quite as huge as the Springboks. But for me as a woman, that was the most wonderful moment. Yes.
Yeah. And you know, those are, you know, further debates that need to be had. You know, how do we weight these events as well? But that being said, coming back to just seizing the moment and seizing the opportunity, you spoke about the leadership of Siya Kolisi.
Yes.
There's a moment here for the president that he can leverage on. The goodwill that is going around, the gees that is going around in the country at the moment. If you were advising him, Terry, what would you advise him to do?
Well, I would have advised him to get started very much sooner, Sakina. Because when you come in right at the end and try and build on this gees, you almost look like you're coming in, and I saw various articles written about how his presence and coming in to take the cup was almost, you know, people almost felt quite uncomfortable with him there. So I think as a leader, you need to be with your team from the beginning, and you need to be cheering them on after every single match. And if you're a company leader, you need to be celebrating all the small victories for your organization and not just waiting for the big bang. It needs to be built.
Okay. So that's where we're going to have to leave it, Terry. And I think we unfortunately are going to have to work at this one. This gees is not going to miraculously stay with us, Leanne.
No.
It's going to take some work. Terry Oakley-Smith is the CEO and founder of Diversi-T. And of course, keeping the gees going, you know, we look at those beautiful pictures of South African children.
That little boy, Elizabeth.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Elizabeth. And when he met him,
we ran
and hugged him. It's beautiful visuals.
Yeah.
Let's not lose it. Let's not lose it, South Africa. Really, we shouldn't. So I think maybe it's a nice way to end the program with these visuals and diversity. Thank you. Great conversation, ladies. Thank you.
Indeed.